everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is me, and it is Nate, and we have a couple of things that we want to cover, so we're going to skip right over the dad chat, so apologies to all of you who want us to talk about how cold and old we are, as we normally do for 5 to 10 minutes. We got two big stories. I know the biggest one that you guys are probably wondering about is going to be Fort Hood, and we're definitely going to get to that, but we're going to cover something first, because if we start talking about Fort Hood, it's just going to take up the entire episode. And I feel like this other story, I don't want it to slip underneath. I don't want it to be not talked about. I think it's important as well. Former Israeli space security chief says aliens exist and humanity is not ready. Nate, you like Star Trek, right?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine when I was a kid.
I feel like, you know, the hope of like the 90s, you know, the late 80s and 90s and even 60s in the original series was very hopeful for humanity. But I honestly, like, I don't believe this, obviously, but I do believe that if there was a galactic federation of some kind in the universe, that humans definitely would not be allowed into it.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's like the most believable part of the story. So let's. Did you want to read this? Did you like me to read it? You usually do a lot of the reading.
I'll do the reading. So, like you said, the headline was the former Israeli space security chief says aliens exist, humanity not ready. The subhead: This galactic federation has supposedly been in contact with Israel and the U.S. for years, but are keeping themselves a secret to prevent hysteria until humanity is ready.
So these super intelligent aliens are only hooking up with like the most fascist and racist countries.
Yeah, exactly.
It is the biggest assholes of the world are supposedly in contact with these people.
Yeah, I mean, it would make me laugh. There's like, yes, 3 countries know about this. Apparently, America, Israel, and Brazil under Jair Bolsonaro for some reason. Like, only the aliens only want to talk to the most right-wing governments on the planet. Next, like they want to contact Hungary, but they're searching for an interpreter because Hungarian is so difficult. You know, it's just, yeah, exactly. Has the state of Israel made contact with aliens? According to retired Israeli general and current professor Haim Eshed, the answer is yes, but this has been kept a secret because, quote, humanity isn't ready, unquote. Speaking in an interview to Yediot Aharonot, Eshed, who served as the head of Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years and is a 3-time recipient of the Israel Security Award, explained that Israel and the United States have both been dealing with aliens for years. And this by no means refers to immigrants, with Eshed clarifying the existence of a galactic federation. Why? The 87-year-old former space security chief gave further descriptions about exactly what sort of agreements may have been made between the aliens and the U.S., which ostensibly have been made because they wish to research and understand the fabric of the universe. This cooperation includes a secret underground base on Mars where there are American and alien representatives. What? If true, this would coincide with U.S. President Donald Trump's creation of the Space Force as the 5th branch of the armed forces, although it is unclear how long this sort of relationship is, and if any, has been going on between the U.S. and its reported extraterrestrial allies. But Eshed insists that Trump is aware of them and that he was on the verge of disclosing their existence. However, the Galactic Federation reportedly stopped him from doing so, saying they wish to prevent mass hysteria since they felt humanity needed to, quote, evolve and reach a stage where we will understand what space and spaceships are, unquote. Yediot Aharonot reported.
The aliens think we're all dumb as shit. Just like, look, do you even understand how one could ship through space in a spaceship, you fucking dipshits? And they talk to Donald Trump, a man who can't stop bragging about how he defeated COVID when COVID is still happening. But yeah, he's going to keep that shit on lockdown.
As for why he's chosen to reveal this information now, Eshed explained that the timing was simply due to how much the academic landscape has changed and how respected he is in academia. That's so funny. If I had come up with what I'm saying today 5 years ago, I would have been hospitalized, he explained to Yediot.
Turns out there's no room in the hospitals now, so I can say whatever I want.
Exactly. He added that, quote, today they're already talking differently. I have nothing to lose. I've received my degrees and awards. I am respected in universities abroad where the trend is also changing, unquote. Eshed provided more information in his newest book, The Universe Beyond the Horizon, Conversations with Professor Haim Eshed, along with other details such as how aliens have prevented nuclear apocalypses and, quote, when we can jump in and visit the men in black, unquote. The book is available now for 98 new Israeli shekels. While it is unclear if any evidence exists that could support Eschet's claims, they did come just ahead of a recent announcement by Space IL, the group behind Israel's failed attempt to land a spacecraft on the moon in 2019. Uploaded to social media with the text, "Get ready to get excited again." The announcement contained a 15-second video of the moon with text saying "back to the moon," followed by the date of December 9th, 2020. It is likely that this is a follow-up to the Bereshit spacecraft, which crashed after engineers lost contact with it just minutes before it was due to land. However, the follow-up project titled Bereshit 2 is expected to take 3 years to be ready. What?
You know, and China just recently landed on the moon themselves. There was not a lot of fanfare to the third country being on the moon, but to be fair, nobody's been to the moon for a while. So China doing this is a big thing. It's pretty wild that Israel has a space program that they're trying to get to the moon. Never heard of it before. Obviously, there's a reason, because it's a massive failure.
Yeah, their unmanned spacecraft they tried to land on the moon, yes, crashed. Yeah, I mean, who even knows why Israel wants to have a space program? I mean, obviously, like their own satellites and stuff like that makes sense. But yeah, it's I think it's just a prestige thing, and hasn't been going super well. But yeah, so apparently, an 87-year-old guy, like many people respect me. More and more people are taking me seriously. By the way, there's a galactic federation. There are secret bases on Mars. Americans are there. I feel like this is just a case of Grandpa needs to take his pills, or more than that, Grandpa's got a stupid book coming out and decided to just do this and leverage his, previous reputation as someone who had, gotten to very senior ranks in the Israeli government to sell his book. So somehow I don't think there's actually a galactic federation, but it's nice. It's nice to dream. I do imagine that if there were, sentient, intelligent life out there, and they saw what humans did on a regular basis, they'd be like, yeah, that place is a zoo. I don't want to go there. So
yeah, I certainly want to know where I stand with aliens. And if I don't care where I stand, I just want to know, like, do the aliens want to be my friend? Do they want to just be like, put a quarantine around us, be like, don't go near Earth for the next 500 years? Either they're going to sort it out, or they're going to sort it out by figuring it out, or they're going to sort it out by just, scouring themselves from the face of the earth. Either way, we don't have to worry about it. I feel like in Star Trek, we are that, the prime directive, where it's like, don't talk to these people. We don't want to fuck up everything. They need to move. They need to continue on in a way that, on their own way. They need to discover space by themselves. That is absolutely where we are 100% of the time. So I'm happy to think that maybe aliens don't want anything to do with me, because that if they're out there and they're over there and they don't want to bother me, then that's another thing I don't have to worry about. Like, can you imagine if there are aliens and we had to deal with that too? Like, if aliens exist around here, they know about us and they want fuck all to do with us, cool. I got other things to worry about. I got to raise a kid. There's COVID going on. I got other shit. So we'll back burner aliens until, maybe another 50 years or so from now.
Yeah, kind of fucked up, I think. But I mean, at the same time, very, very stupid. So, you know what? Like, I appreciate it. I appreciate them I appreciate the fact that this guy wants to sell some books and is, just being one of those people. But, it's just one of those things that I genuinely don't care about that much, because it just seems, how to describe this? I'm glad that this guy is willing to leverage his reputation to sell books. It would be cool if there were aliens. Somehow I don't think that's the case, but at least not that we have been able to discover. And the idea of there being secret U.S. bases on Mars is just hilarious to me. So, I mean, cool, whatever. Grandpa, I appreciate you giving interviews, but perhaps let's not get too excited.
Yeah, like if this had come out during the Obama administration and you said that Obama was keeping it quiet, like, that dude seems like he could not say state secrets. So it'd be a modicum more believable. But like, I don't know how you look at Donald Trump, who constantly like verbal diarrheas out of his mouth about elections and about when he was just a wee lad or whatever, and think that he wouldn't have told us about aliens. Like, anybody was going to convince him, like, Gleep Glorp and Nibnob are up there in their spaceship with President Trump just being like, just keep it on the down low, dude. Just shut the fuck up. We don't want to get involved right now. We will get involved later. We'll make you all very rich, but not right now. Just keep it on the down low. I just don't see it.
No, I don't see it either, man. I mean, and also it's just like, I just have a feeling that if that was true, Trump would have said something. Because I mean, come on, do you really think he wouldn't be able to fucking keep quiet about that shit?
I also want to extend an apology to our future alien overlords, just in case Gleep Glorp and Nibnob are both horrible slurs in your language. Are bad. Please don't laser blast me off of the face of the earth. I'm a dad trying to get by, man. That's all it is.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's the fun part of the episode. Now we get to talk about the not fun part of the episode. The fun part of the episode is incredibly stupid as is, but now we have to talk about the Army's report on sexual harassment and sexual assault response in Fort Hood, Texas, and how much of a nightmare this report indicates things to be. And while we're not going to go through it line by line, there were some really big takeaways, and I think the biggest one was that genuinely it had been a check-the-box exercise in which it sort of met all of the reportable requirements for being a SHARP program. So for people who aren't aware of SHARP, SHARP is Sexual Harassment Assault Response Prevention Program. And Francis knows a bit more about it. I was never a SHARP coordinator, a VA, anything like that, a victim advocate. So Francis probably knows a little bit more. Also, since like a lot of the major workload of SHARP is handled by NCOs.
Yeah. So good Lord. SHARP is it's a program that's been evolving and changing a lot with the Army. And it is our, the way how we deal with, if you get a corporate job, you have to take the harassment training, the sexual assault training, things like that, how to act, not to act. The Army, of course, makes it a little bit different because it's not a corporate office, so you're not dealing with cubicles and whatnot. But it does, SHARP does, like, hey, if you're at a party and you see one of your fellow soldiers is kind of drunk and being, kind of dragged out the door, you should go intervene because that's your soldier and likely that person is going to go get assaulted or whatever. Like, SHARP works in the base idea of SHARP works. There is a lot, when people were talking about this on Twitter when this first came out, there was a lot of talk about how, does SHARP work or does SHARP not work? And that bases itself around, the command climate of how do people, how does your in general, your NCOs, how do they deal with it? What is their attitudes towards it? Are they serious about it? Are they treating SHARP as a box to check? Like once a year we have to do SHARP training, or SHARP training a thing that is always ongoing? And the report, talks about how those things are bad, but also the fundamentals of SHARP are flawed, and which isn't necessarily the content of what's being taught. Because I've always had a little bit of problem with the content because sometimes it is a bit victim blamey, but also at the same time it is assaulter blamey. Like it is a look, this is not your fault, but you also should be careful yourself. Like don't be a soft target. So it uses a lot of military terms. It uses a lot of, don't always use a buddy system, always be out with somebody, have somebody know where you are if you're going out by yourself. Those very basic things that are taught to our young daughters, and that one day I'm going to have to teach to my daughter too, of, look, you might be the victim and that's not your fault, but you also need to protect yourself. You need to know how to protect yourself because, it might not go well for you, and there might not be an institution that's going to back you up.
Well, yeah, the thing is that, I mean, that you obviously have to protect yourself because you have to assume the worst, and it's a really unfortunate thing, but it's also the truth. And not only do you have to assume the worst about people's own individual personal conduct, you have to assume the worst about institutions, that they will not protect you, they will protect themselves, and they will do everything they can to make you feel like you're going crazy if you are a victim of abuse. And I feel like the Army is no different than that. It's just that the situation is far worse because of a couple of things. I mean, but primarily because clearly, even at the very highest levels, people knew how dysfunctional it was, and they just genuinely didn't do anything about it.
Exactly. And there's a lot of deficiencies to SHARP that really comes out in this report. One of them, just reading the headlines here of some like the headings of the findings that they had. So there were like 9 different findings. They're all categorized and then broken out, and there's a lot that bases itself around Sharp. One of them is knowing during the review period of 2018 to 2020, Fort Hood leadership knew, or at least should have known, of the high risk of sexual assault and harassment at Fort Hood. This has been known since 2014, that Fort Hood is a place where it's a meat grinder, basically, for a woman. It's known. People.
One of the things that was really surprising to me about this was not just that it was, a couple of things about it, but like Fort Hood seems uniformly singularly bad in the sense that if you look at installations of similar sizes, like Bragg, for example, by all of the metrics they use in this report, everything from, reports of sexual harassment, substantiate claims of sexual harassment and assault, compliance training, like whether or not people in like randomly selected panels of soldiers at different ranks from units knew the stuff they were supposed to be getting trained on. And uniformly, Hood performed worse than other major installations of a similar size, but some of the units on Fort Hood, like the tenant units there, like especially 3rd Cavalry Regiment, it was terrible. It was so even far below the average at Fort Hood. So, if you looked at Fort Hood in some of the graphs that are presented here, you'll see a situation in which like Fort Hood's hospital, their medical command on Hood, Darnell Medical Center, had, for example, if you were they do a random sampling of soldiers at different ranks in that unit. Darnell Medical Center, 30% of people knew all 5 of the reporting knowledge questions correctly. So like they surveyed them on, what the Army sort of standard protocols are for sexual harassment, whereas 3rd Cavalry Regiment, 10% got all 5 of them right. In terms of how many questions they got right in general, Darnell Medical Center random sampling, 66% of questions answered correctly, 3rd Cavalry Regiment, 45%. But then also you go down into this report and you look at specifically 3rd Cav, and there were incidents where they talk about how specifically the senior victim advocates were terrible at their jobs. Everyone knew it. People filed complaints. Even CID knew it. And the only thing that made a difference was finally someone filed an IG complaint, Inspector General complaint. And after that point, a report had to be done by an outside authority, and they went in, did an investigation, and determined that this victim advocate, as quoted in the report, placed victims in 3rd CR at risk. So I'm going to read this whole paragraph to you about 3rd Cavalry Regiment. So it says, additionally, the quality of Sharp personnel in the 3rd Cav was raised as a serious issue. Multiple interviews supported this assertion. During the course of individual interviews, one particular VA was singled out by many 3rd CR soldiers as being toxic and unresponsive to their needs. It was heard from a large number of interview subjects that none of the 3rd Cav soldiers would go to that person because they gave bad advice. This victim advocate was also notorious with CID, special agents, who complained about the victim advocate's lack of professionalism during victim interviews. The 3rd Corps Sharp program manager warned the last 2 3rd CR commanders about this VA on several occasions beginning in 2018, and nothing was done until a victim finally lodged an IG complaint. It was then the opinion of the program manager and other Sharp officials that this victim advocate placed victims in the 3rd CR at risk. Another 3rd CR Sharp VA was redacted at the time of the on-site portion of this review. This probably means this person was either off duty or under some kind of investigation or in confinement because of criminal activity, but it was something bad this person had done. The 3rd Cavalry Regiment commander selected and senior rated the brigade lead victim advocate, which is to say that the regimental commander, who would be probably a full colonel, because I'm pretty sure the Cav regiment, the way that it works is it's like the equivalent of a brigade combat team, that not only is this commander the person who picks that person for the job, but it's that commander's job to be his senior rater or their senior rater on their officer evaluation or a senior NCO evaluation report. So what it basically sounds like is that you could look at metrics of, for example, the surveys that show that these soldiers weren't getting trained on what their rights were, on how to report things, on what constitutes sexual assault. And the leadership was hearing from people, not just soldiers, also CID, that these people were fuck-ups and wasn't doing anything about it. And the one thing that forced them to do something about it was an outside authority coming in, doing an investigation because of an IG complaint, and then discovering, oh, wow, it's been substantiated that this person is fucking terrible at their job.
Yeah, not only an IGU complaint, but PAO really dropping the ball on everything. Like, I don't know if you read the PAO section.
I mean, I read the executive summary, but it sounded like they were terrible at their jobs.
Oh God, the PAO. Well, and here's something that I want to bring up too. I don't know what it is about the U.S. Army that just always has to be moving people around. It always just seems really suspect. So after you do 2 years and then you PCS, which is permanent something.
Permanent change of station.
Yeah. So you move. So you're at Fort Hood for 2 years, and then you get assigned somewhere else. And assignments to other places come in for multiple reasons. Whether you're just you've been at that base for a long time, or there's a position somewhere else that is going to advance your career or something like that. But like in these. In here, the SHARP program, and also their CID, the Criminal Investigation Detachment or Division at Fort Hood, people are just constantly rotating in and out, and that that doesn't. If you're only in a place for like 2 years, it doesn't create or foster any kind of sense of community or sense of belonging. You're just there, and then you're out. Like even if you're 6 months out from PCSing, mentally you're already checked out. So you've got it's going to take time to get into it, and then it's going to take time to get out of it. So really, your effective time at any base is what, maybe 18 months at the most, if you're lucky, if you're only doing 2 years. And this report, I want to definitely the way that the Army and that soldiers treat SHARP and treat sexual assault and sexual harassment is a problem. But the SHARP program itself was created quickly. It was a thing that was slapped together because the military is inherently reactionary. We're not proactionary. We're never going to be like, hey, before all these things become a problem, let's try to do something about that. That's what I do in my regular IT job. Is I look for problems and then I try to fix the problems before they become big problems. The Army doesn't do that because it's too hard. It costs too much money. You can't you can't convince anybody to give you the time or the money to do it. And so again, the SHARP project or program itself is fundamentally flawed in here in ways that really do need to be talked about. Like in Fort Hood, this is the first time I've ever seen somebody do a deep dive, because it's really easy to say superficially well, SHARP doesn't work because the NCOs suck. True, definitely true. SHARP doesn't work if your NCOs who are running it suck, but also the headings here underneath the Army SHARP program is structurally flawed. Number one, by design, SHARP military personnel are assigned via borrowed military manpower. That means it's an extra duty to be a SHARP person. It doesn't, the next one is that it doesn't help your, it's unlike other career broadening opportunities. It doesn't necessarily, it's not like becoming a drill sergeant or, spending 2 years as a recruiter where that's like an automatic, rank up for you. It doesn't hold the same weight. So, you don't have incentive for people to become SHARP advocates. And I know that the incentive should be to take care of the soldiers, and the incentive should be to make sure that everyone is safe and healthy and all that great stuff. But you need to look at this on a transactional kind of thing. You definitely have those people out there. You have people who want to be I wish that I could be a SHARP rep all the time. I wish that I could know these things and be really in deep with these things and just make that my career, or make that half of my career, or just give me 10 years to do it. And I'd love to do it. But the thing is, that's going to stagnate you. So if you are somebody in the military and you do want to have some kind of advancement, you don't want to just be stuck in a corner somewhere, you can't just sit and do SHARP. You have to move around. You have to continue to do these things, which again is a problem, because then you don't have people who are trained well. You don't have people that know the different. I've gone through SHARP training 100 times. I couldn't tell you the difference between restricted and unrestricted reporting. I think unrestricted is it doesn't necessarily, it keeps you you on the down low as the victim. It doesn't put your name out there. It stays within the Army. But unrestricted is that opens up the big can of worms, and then everybody's going to know. And so it gives you that opportunity. And it really feels like that the SHARP program did that because they knew this is if you want to come to us but you are worried about retaliation, don't worry, we have a thing for you. Rather than fixing the retaliation part, which retaliation is also another thing that comes up a lot in here. But I want to stick on Sharp real quick. The other one is considerable time is required to develop Sharp military professionals. So when I was never Sharp, but I was equal opportunity. There are various sets and stages that you go up to. There's like your local company or squad level person who goes through maybe a couple days of training. Basically, it's how to deal, how to take in victim advocates, or how to become a victim advocate, how to get your victims in touch with victim advocates above you. It's basically you're a pipeline into the system that's supposed to work. I was in classes with people like that. Guess what? That is a memo. I was put into that class because of a memo. And, I'm not going to say all, half, but there was an uncomfortable amount of people who thought that the Sharp program was bullshit. That was in literally the Sharp class.
I want to talk about the CID part too, because I think the thing that's kind of crazy is that everything you're saying about Sharp and you're saying about PAO is mirrored by their criminal investigation division. And so this whole segment is a little bit long, but I wanted to read this and then we can react to it at the end, because I feel like this will give people in the audience here a little bit of an understanding of just how this was a problem across the board for everything that CID did with what they investigated. And because the authors of the report and the people who investigated it and did this report are either current or former FBI, it's basically like people talking about their own practice as investigating agents and how much this fucked up compared to, granted, the FBI is not exactly the gold standard, but you know what I mean? Like, here are people sort of commenting on the specific investigation angle of wrongdoing and criminal behavior on Fort Hood. So I'm just going to read this to you. The headline of this segment is "The Fort Hood CID Detachment Was Inexperienced." It says there is also a high ratio of inexperienced special agents assigned to Fort Hood CID, which contributed to its inefficiencies. A review of the agents assigned to Fort Hood CID during fiscal year 2019 revealed that 58 of the 63 agents, or the 53 assigned enlisted agents, were apprentice agents who were fresh out of the 16-week CID Special Agent course at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and not fully accredited to conduct investigations solo. An apprentice agent is defined as an agent who has been at his first unit assignment less than a year and must receive mentorship and constant evaluation for suitability from a more experienced special agent. Upon successful completion of the year and the certification of his or her special agent, I don't know what C stands for here, an apprentice becomes an accredited CID special agent. During the same period, 6 of the 13 assigned warrant officers were also apprentice special agents. According to CID sources in and outside Fort Hood, these extremely high ratios of apprentice agents are not conducive to timely, thorough, and compliant investigations. Most of the SAs were reassigned of 26 months, causing a rolling cascade of apprentice agents at Fort Hood CID. Between the chairman of the Fort Hood Independent Review Committee and 5 support members of the committee, all of whom are former FBI special agents, there is a combined 150 years of experience in conducting and managing complex investigations. It has been the experience of these career federal law enforcement professionals that investigative agents with less than 2 years' experience are generally only capable of conducting simple witness interviews, handling less complex investigative techniques, and acting in a support role for more experienced cased agents. They are still developing investigative skills and learning procedures, documentation, and administrative requirements. They have less training and need to work under close supervision. They are not ready for complex investigations involving deaths, traumatized victims, warrants, and electronic and other forensic evidence. It is the rare, newly minted agent who is capable of developing and articulating evidence to support evidentiary warrant issues by judges or magistrates to obtain such evidence. In essence, Fort Hood CID is a training ground. When considering the crime issues, the number of highly publicized death cases, the high number of sexual assaults, and other crime dynamics on the post discussed in finding number 8, this situation cannot help but impact investigative tempo, quality, and timeliness of investigations, especially when a very complex case arises, such as that involving the disappearance of Vanessa Guillen. There were simply too few journeyman-level agents to work the complex sex crime and death cases while mentoring the large number of inexperienced and uncredentialed special agents who were constantly transferring in and out. There was minimal continuity and institutional knowledge at the Fort Hood CID. This impacted outside law enforcement relationships, as discussed further in section 4.5 below. They're talking about how basically everything is checklist driven and they have very little time to mentor. I want to talk about a couple of the cases here. That inexperience was evident to the FHIRC when reviewing the death and suicide CID case files covering fiscal years 2018 through 2020. These reviews revealed areas of concern as to investigative attention to detail, completeness, and file documentation. For example, in one death case in April 2020, a soldier overdosed on methamphetamine and fentanyl. There were no interviews, no crime scene investigation, and no apparent attempts to determine who supplied the drugs. There was no attempt to investigate the soldier's history of drug use and the identity of his associates. Drug overdoses should be fully investigated to determine where, when, and how such drugs came into the possession of a soldier and who supplied the drugs for potential prosecution of the supplier and to cut off the flow of drugs to the post. In another investigation in 2018, an infant was shaken to death by his soldier grandfather in a Fort Hood apartment. The subject lied about the circumstances and cause of the child's death. Several statements were taken of the subject, who initially said the infant struck his head. He later admitted he shook the baby to death because he was crying excessively. Autopsy results stated the death was a homicide. However, a referral was not documented in the file of the time of this review. Moreover, the subject was allowed to stay in the barracks while his case was investigated for 18 months with no apparent evaluation of the risk the subject posed to himself or others. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to blame CID. Again, this is the military at large that's doing this. This is all like, kind of a structural institutional thing where they're just like, look, you're a new CID guy, you go to Fort Hood, don't worry, you're going to get some experience. There's a lot of
opportunities for experience. IG
right.
sex crimes and murders.
Right. And
you're going to be investigating them, and no one knows their job there.
Yeah. Nobody knows their job. Nobody knows what they're doing properly. They talk about the one guy who brought the meth on, and they're just like, well, he died. I guess we're just not going to look into this further or find out where he got the meth or what we're going to do anything, case closed. He died of meth. Like, there's no, again, it's all reactive. It's not proactive. Proactivity is not, it's not rewarded.
Not particularly rewarded or encouraged in the military. And so, yeah, to me, the idea that you have a base of that size. I mean, Hood is a huge installation. I believe Hood, in terms of its land area for training area, is the largest installation in the U.S. It's not the largest in terms of number of personnel assigned, but it's up there in the largest groupings. I think Bragg is the largest for personnel assigned. And believe me, Bragg has fucking problems. Bragg has insane issues with drugs, murder, sex crimes, etc., but not to the same degree as Hood, both in tallied number and in like per capita.
Fort Hood can't stop smoking weed, man. They pop hot 30% higher than anybody else. Like, the place is fucked.
I mean, I was thinking about this at Bragg. I mean, I was at Bragg when a soldier who had been severely, he had suffered a traumatic brain injury in Iraq. He had been forcibly ejected from a vehicle after an IED blast. He had basically demanded to see the body of his friend who was killed in the blast. And then after he did, he had suffered a complete breakdown. And then back at home station, he had gotten found, I guess, liable for, they accused him and did a 15-6 saying that he had stolen tools from like a mechanic's tool set in the motor pool. And he was going to be charged for that. Like, he was going to get UCMJ and he was going to have a statement of charges. So he went to I believe it was the 4th of July or Memorial Day safety briefing at his battalion when his battalion commander was like, all right, everyone gather around, and then walked up with a pistol and killed his battalion commander and then killed himself in front of the formation. So, I mean, like, Bragg has fucking problems. Like, but nothing compared to Hood. And that's the thing that shocks me about this, is that you would think that in an area where clearly they're having issues, the Army would say, maybe we can look at how we do manning and assignments for CID, that maybe this should not be like a rookie training ground, for us to figure out what the fuck's going on with our people. But no, I mean, like I said, it's institutional inertia. It's people looking out for their OER bullets, and it's people basically minimizing the problem, because the concern isn't that soldiers are dying or being assaulted or assaulting civilians or killing infants. Apparently it's, well, we can't let this reporting look too bad because then we might not, get the career advancement that we want. And I mean, that's just what happens in the barracks. They can deal with their own problems. Fuck you, got mine, basically.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. I mean, in my opinion, at least,
it's not great. It's not great, and like you said, it's baked into us at this point. Like, there are so many things that are not even sharp related that you can fix that helps fix these things. Like I said, stop PCSing people every 10. Let people stay on a base for 10 years. Why not? Like, I don't understand, like, unless somebody wants to leave a military base, why are we constantly rotating people back and forth. Like I get it for your E3s or E4s, and then they re-enlist and they want to go somewhere else. I understand that, but like this constant drag to PCS people, to move them across the country, to pack all their stuff, to force them to do all these things.
It's just strange to me because it's like you see people re-enlisting for a long time to stay at an assignment. Like I remember in Alaska, I had NCOs. Now they were fucking homesteaders, but like I had NCOs who showed up to the unit as privates and were still in the unit, in the battalion, certainly in the brigade as E7s, and often there was one guy in particular who, he was a fucking asshole, but he did that. Then he went and did a rotation as a drill sergeant at Fort Jackson and then came back to Alaska to be a first sergeant. And he was going to either retire or go be a sergeant major. But ultimately, aside from like training schools like the NCO academies and like BNOC, ANOC, that stuff, and then one hitch as a drill sergeant in South Carolina, he spent his entire career in Alaska. And I'm not saying that's the preferred mode of behavior, but what I am saying is this: why in the fuck are you looking at a situation? I'm just saying, as someone who's not in the Army anymore, who can just read a report like any other person with a fucking brain, why are you looking at a new functional area, or in some cases a new MOS for enlisted soldiers, being a CID agent? Why are you not making that, just changing the length of that assignment? Like tell them like you're going to be wherever you go for your first unit assignment, you're going to be there for 5 years so you can actually learn to be a special agent. Why on earth would you rotate them out at 2 years, especially if clearly CID is not serving its function at Bliss or at Hood? You know what I mean?
Well, okay. So doing your first 2 years and then moving somewhere, I understand. You've done, but first off, you need to spread that out among everybody. And then it's like, okay, you've done your first 2 years. Where's the place that you want to do 5 years at? And then where's the place that you want to do, another 5 or 10 years at, or something like that. Like, I understand. I've always been a big proponent of, as soon as somebody makes E5, you have to move them out of a unit and move them somewhere else, because everybody remembers them as a shitheaded E4. So, like, as a shitheaded CID officer, who's in their first year or two, I understand, like, okay, so you've got but there needs to be a lot of people at Fort Hood already who are just like, yeah, I'm on year 15 here. I know this place like the back of my hand. I can tell you about everybody, and I can mentor you. So it's that, like, there needs to be something. There just needs to be something more permanent. There needs to be a way of saying, stay here and put down roots, and feel proud of this base. Like, give a fuck about the base, give a fuck about the people, because in the Army, you're worried about you. That's all that anybody's ever told me to worry about, is me in the Army. It's never, it's the mission first or whatever, but also it's just like, oh, well, if you've got a twinge, fill out an LOD, what does LOD stand for?
Line of duty.
Line of duty injury. Like, you twinged your back on a ruck mark, fill out an LOD, which is all good advice, but it really just kind of fosters a belief that you should just be looking out for you and not for anybody else.
I want to jump in though, because there's something I think is really important here to clarify, which is that we're looking at the institutional failures and the obvious, just really kind of like jaw-dropping level of mismanagement. But I feel like it's really important to talk about, one of the things they pointed out here is that the overwhelming majority of the sexual assaults and harassment claims that appeared that were not well investigated happened in line units. And line units, as we know, in recent years, they opened up some all-male MOSs to female soldiers. Now, it's not female soldiers' fault for being in these fucking units. It's not. It's the fault of units for not keeping their soldiers safe and not taking it seriously. But I think the biggest point I want to make here is that when we talk about all these problems, like, I think you kind of ignore that the primary victims here are people who have no power in the military. The single largest number of cases by pay grade were E4s. So, specialists don't exactly have a huge amount of institutional power in the military. And they were being preyed upon by people in their own units. Now, I'm going to guess from my personal experience that the people getting preyed upon were probably being preyed upon by people either in a similar pay grade or slightly higher pay grade. Because that's been my experience. When you have, lieutenants claiming, filing sexual harassment or sexual assault complaints, they're being harassed by other lieutenants or captains. When you have specialists or privates coming forward, which they rarely do because they're so incredibly intimidated because it's so obvious that they'll be retaliated against, the people they are filing complaints against are typically other privates, specialists, E5s, E6s, so sergeants, staff sergeants. So the reason why this stuff makes me so mad is because we talk so much about the institution and the need for the institution to uphold its standards. But the problem here is that, like, that eventually gets to the point where, like, you're kind of doing the majority of your hand wringing about the institution sullying the reputation of the institution. And you're not talking about just how exposed and victimized the absolute most powerless people in the military are. I mean, I can recall stories about this in Korea. I can recall from my own experience. One of my good friends was an MI company commander, so a military intelligence company commander in Korea. And the problems that some of his soldiers were coming to him with were like, these were young privates. These were 19, 20-year-old young women, many of whom were women of color. And they came to him just saying, like, look, there are NCOs who are basically like, we're having a big get-together party at this hotel in Seoul, you're going to be there. And just constantly being like, you're going to be there, here's your tickets, you're going to be there. And, this was in some cases coming from their first-line supervisors. And it's pretty obvious what was going to happen. They were going to be supplied with alcohol, and they were going to be expected to fucking, perform sexually for these men, for these NCOs. And their fear was, I don't know who I can report this to because, the victim advocate or the sexual the sharp rep or the people involved in the process or the NCO chain of command, they're all friends. They're all these people. Who do you talk to? They're at that party, and randomly in my friend's case, in one particular case, the one person that she thought the victim or the person who was being harassed thought might be able to do something happened to be the random white officer, the random captain, because at least that captain wasn't directly in the chain of command of the people that were harassing her, and it's like, so what I'm saying here is that these institutional failures, like what they represent is thousands and thousands of individual people getting victimized by the people that they have no right or no ability to separate themselves from. If they're getting harassed by people on their barracks floor or in their company or their chain of command, they can't just be like, yo, fuck this job, I quit, I'm out. You can't do that. You legally cannot. You will go to jail if you even try, And like a story like Vanessa Guillen, here's someone who has constantly been facing from the same person, and then that person finally kills her. And what does the institution do? Nothing. It doesn't, they aren't paying attention. They're worried about the metrics looking bad on the next whatever fucking commander's update brief. And that's what it represents. So that's why this stuff gets me so incensed because, yeah, why do they do these stupid decisions with manning? Why do they not think that people need to actually do training? Why do people go to bat for terrible, shitty victim advocates who they know are toxic, who they know are contributing to the problem? Like, that is an institutional failure and it needs to be addressed. But like, I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that here are primarily young women joining the military, having no rights, having no protections, being incredibly exposed, being preyed upon primarily by people in their own fucking formation, and people aren't doing anything about it, CID is like, oh, well, this is a broadening assignment. It doesn't matter if you fuck up this rape case. I mean, like, whatever, you'll get it at your next duty station. Like, I want to fucking lose my mind.
There's definitely the report... my favorite part of the report is like at the very end where they're just like, here's some other fucked up stuff that we noticed that we just have to talk about because it's fucked up. And one of them is mold, barracks, family housing, and other facilities, as well as quality of life issues. And there's a couple of paragraphs about it, but there is one. We
spend $1 trillion a year on this shit, and this is what we get.
Here's the wildest. Additionally, most of their clothing and household goods have been ruined by mold. The family also reports that persistent pursuit of adequate living quarters appears to be a nuisance for the installation, as reflected in a reminder they received from the garrison commander. Now, these are people who have been like losing their children, have gotten ill because of mold in their housing. Their furniture, their clothes have been getting ruined. So, received a reminder they received from the garrison commander that family housing is a privilege, not a right. Once again, it appears the human touch is missing at Fort Hood. I mean, like, can you imagine, like, being in a situation where the army is your only escape, or being somebody who like comes from a long line of soldiers and they want to continue in those footsteps. You know, people join the army for all kinds of different reasons, but nobody joins the army thinking it's just like, all right, time to get black lung and be raped. Like,
yeah, it's like, sweet. I'm glad I'm living in the barracks where it's moldy as fucking shit's broken. By the way, my barracks roommate is this guy they put in here pending an investigation. What did he do? Oh, he murdered his infant grandson.
Right, for
whatever.
He's just gonna hang out here for 18 months. Hey, by the way, the locks on your doors don't work, and there's been a work order in for it for the last 6 months. Like that's the army that you have to fucking deal with, and we treat this as if it's normal, and because your average 20-year-old private or specialist who's joined up doesn't know the avenues of approach for that, and also any avenues that are there are
they don't know their rights either. They don't know their rights, and all it takes is one NC. I mean, Francis, you were a fucking private. I was a stupid cadet, and then a fucking first or second lieutenant. Like, all it takes is one senior person, someone who outranks you, saying, "Hey, you're fucked up. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Here's how it is," and you just take that as a given. And if that person's wrong, or that person's abusing you, or that person's breaking the law, like, unless you're really, really shit hot on that stuff, which most people aren't, and they're certainly not encouraged to be shit hot on it, what do they actually wind up like? They don't know their rights. They don't know that what they're experiencing is wrong. You know what I mean? And so like they take it because that's what you're taught to do as a soldier, is fucking take it.
Yep. Take it and shut the fuck up. Listen to your NCOs because here's the thing. When an NCO tells you something, that's a lawful order. And as soon as you say, but that doesn't seem right, that doesn't seem lawful, what are your avenues of approach there? Like me, the smart ass, I'll look at a captain and say, you need to fucking write that down and put your name on it before you ask me to do that, because I don't give a fuck. But your average private doesn't know that. They don't know that, like, when somebody gives you an unlawful order or something like that, you can say no. Because we're all worried about going to jail constantly. Or being reprimanded, because you will be. The retaliation is a problem, and retaliation is a huge thing. And Nate, we're gonna keep going with this if we don't cut ourselves off. So I just want to finish with our Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, who said in an interview that he was surprised to hear about all of the cases of sexual assault and sexual harassment that don't get reported because of retaliation. I'm sorry, who the fuck didn't know that retaliation happens in the Army? And so I had to look into it. I was like, did Ryan actually serve in the Army? And he did. He served in 1997 to 2002 in the 75th Ranger Brigade as a white man. And then it's like, I see why you're blind to literally all of this now. Because
you were a Ranger private. You basically you had battered Ranger private syndrome, and you were
exactly.
You were in the unit that basically if soldiers don't fucking brush their teeth enough, they can kick them out. Like, yeah, I'm sure you had a really representative experience.
And guess what? I fucking guarantee you, Nate, that there are problems in the Ranger Regiment with sexual assault and sexual harassment. Because if you think women don't come forward, bro, do you think guys do?
I had a guy in my Ranger class who had that happen to him. And you know what? All the RIs in Ranger school knew about it and were making fun of him about it. In fucking Ranger school. He had been assaulted by a guy and he would proposition him for sex. He had to fight his way off. And they were making fun of him. I remember one of the graders coming up to him and being like, yeah, oh, you're in third bat? A lot of gay dudes in third bat. And he could just see this kid just like face turn red and look down like, yeah, they knew about. He told me about it later. He was like, yeah, it sucked. I literally got kicked out of the unit and I went to go work at a motor pool at fucking Fort Benning, and I'm trying to get back into regiment, but not third bat.
It's absolutely, yeah. And that is the institutional problems of the military have been something that we've been yelling about since day one on this fucking podcast, and we will continue to yell about, because the Army's not going anywhere. So if it's not going anywhere, let's at least fucking make it better for the people who get sucked into the gaping grinder maw of it. At least, like, if you're gonna go and get shot at for a rich man's oil, you should at least not get like sexually harassed while it's happening or something. Like,
I mean, I guess I just say that's why I keep saying don't join. And like, I know that we're broken records on this, but the reason why we say don't join is because once you sign the dotted line, you are absolutely expendable in every way. And the institution exists to protect the institution. There are individual leaders who do care about you, but by and large, they are powerless. By and large, they are very junior, and the institution itself does not. And you are grist for the mill. And as you can see, they would rather you not be protected from all kinds of abuse, not even have the dignity of someone performing a proper investigation if you are murdered or die in suspicious circumstances, because it's too much of an inconvenience for them to rethink how they do manning for CID. You know, it's more important that the brigade commander give his friend a good fucking evaluation than that person being able to serve in any capacity as a victim advocate. That's how the institution works. Some people might say make the institution better. Well, you know what? You know who doesn't have the opportunity to make the institution better in any capacity? The junior-most people who are victims.
Yeah, Vanessa Guillen doesn't have the chance to make it better.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking exactly.
And the people who aren't murdered, your friend who like, I'm surprised that he would want to go back to Ranger Battalion after that. I wouldn't. I would be out of the fucking army if I got treated like that. You know, and
battered Ranger Private syndrome, man. They love it so much. It's the only unit in the army that matters. They want to go back so hardcore. They hate the army. They get out and then they realize they really just want to be Rangers again. Like it's a whole can of worms. To be honest with you, I'm not really qualified to fucking talk about because I wasn't in regiment and I never wanted to be in regiment. But
no, that's fine. So our bonus episode today is a conversation with me and Carrie Shocks and Joe Kasabian. Our normal, we do like a Thursday night get together where we just record something. So you're either going to hear us here or hear us on Lions Led by Donkeys. But we just did kind of a dad chat, which we just kind of take to be like dudes over 30 talking about how their backs hurt, and also about the Khmer Rouge, because when you have somebody who's a historian on, it turns out that you end up just talking about really fucked up parts of history. So here's that.
I don't know if either of you have seen on like fucking lawyer Twitter this week, but everyone's just been dunking on resistance hero Neil Cahill for arguing in front of the Supreme Court defending Nestle. And like defending,
oh my god,
about the fucking, like essentially like child slaves that like Nestle was utilizing as part of their labor
for
and
decades.
No idea this happened.
Yeah, so I mean, the shortest version is that like, I mean, I'm sure that most people have run across Neil. He's like a fairly famous like appellate attorney at one point. I mean, I think A-Lab just did like a whole fucking episode on it. So I mean, if you want,
admittedly, I had no idea who this guy was before lawyer Twitter blew him up, and now I'm gonna have to listen to the A-Lab series.
Yeah, so like, I mean, A-Lab is, I'm not gonna belabor the point because A-Lab did a much, Tarek and the rest of them did a much more exhaustive job than I'm gonna do here. But essentially, he's like this, big kind of reply guy, like liberal, lib hero, legal hero, who, at one point was supposed to be the guy, like, if, Ginsburg had retired during Obama's administration, they'd been able to replace her. Neil was like definitely in the running as like, the kind of, whatever. And so, and he's been famous for being, like a non-white lawyer who's, I think he's done the most appellate arguments of any non-white lawyer since Justice Marshall, like when he was still, before he got elevated to the bench. So he's, like fairly famous, but also if you look at what he's arguing, it's, a bunch of he's done some good things, like related to, arguing about, the illegality of government actions at Guantanamo. And, I don't mean to like necessarily, speak against that part of it, and about curtailing, the executive power of the president and the rest of it. But he also has argued for just a lot of really heinous motherfuckers. In my field, he's infamous for filing a brief on behalf of Mark Janus, who was the union objector in Illinois, who had public service, mandatory public service agency fees overturned. Which means that now the union, the public sector union movement has a problem with, quote unquote, free riders, who are folks who are technically represented by the union, but choose to neither pay union dues nor what are called agency fees, which is essentially the cost of representing them.
Yeah, I remember that.
So
you're in the union, but you don't have to pay the dues. And it's like, congratulations, you're completely cutting which of course is the point.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big project of national right to work, and who are also a bunch of fucking scumbags. But Neil filed a brief on behalf of Janice in that case. He argued, and I saw a bunch of like the kind of more like appellate, like centrist lawyers trying to say, well, he technically wasn't arguing for child slavery. He was just saying this particular statute and it apply in this case. And like the big thing that they like to do is, like if you, oh, well, I thought the left was for fairness. And by, criticizing lawyers for representing reprehensible clients, aren't you saying that, not everyone deserves fair union representation? And like, no, or not, sorry, not union, fair legal representation. It's like, no, motherfucker, like that's not like a public defender defending someone who's accused of being a serial killer. Like, they're facing, possibly the death penalty, life in prison. They're facing the ultimate like sovereign power of the state in that particular instance. This is what high-priced lawyer Nestle is able to afford. And that's not the same thing. Like, you don't have to, like, your arm is being twisted to like represent these folks. That's on you. And in the same way as like, it's kind of the inverse of the Lincoln Project thing. These are people who say that they are, progressive heroes through and through. And then when you look at their actual record and what they choose to do with their time, like,
I don't think they ever said that they were progressive. They just were like, we're anti-Trump Republicans, which was exactly which everybody loves to crank off to the idea that Lincoln was a Republican, and they're like, we need to go back to those Republican roots. And like, the roots like of Lincoln saying, look, I'm not saying stop owning humans. I'm just saying stop owning humans as we continue our march across this great country, massacring the Indians.
Yeah.
People were like, no, we want to have more slaves, and we will shoot you in the face if we don't get to do that anymore. So, I mean,
technically in the back of the head.
I'm glad of Lincoln, but also Lincoln can kind of fuck himself in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and he suspended habeas corpus, and he did there were definitely things about the Lincoln and the Lincoln administration that weren't great. I mean, the kind of bullshit of the Emancipation Proclamation where he issued it and it freed the slaves as long as they weren't in any territory that was actually controlled by the Union, because he didn't want to piss off the border states. I mean, and like the arguments, about whether or not that was a real politic move at the time, but whatever. Anyway, all that's really to say is that, it does actually matter the way that you position yourself, but also the things that you do and the causes you choose to represent. That's
totally like Shocks. If you're a public defender and you defended a rapist, I wouldn't think any less of you because that's your job as a public defender. However, if you are a private attorney and you did that,
there's like a difference between there's a difference between like being a public defender and accusing someone and representing someone accused of committing rape and trying to make sure that they that once again that the like huge and omnipresent and oppressive power of the state doesn't accidentally fuck over an innocent person. And that is decidedly different from being a private attorney and doing all of that for what is generally not a lot of fucking money. Like, I mean, public defenders make shit pretty much throughout the course of the country. Actually, I've known people who were public defenders who ended up, going to work retail and becoming retail managers because it they earned a better salary. But there's a difference between that and then being a private attorney and saying like, yeah, I'm going to earn fucking 6 figures this year defending Harvey Weinstein. Like these are distinguishable circumstances, and anyone tells you otherwise is a fucking dickhead.
I would say this is why everybody hates lawyers, but like you don't have to be a lawyer to be this huge of an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the prominent Twitter people, I won't say his name, but he's a very prominent lawyer on Twitter, and he got outed he's a private attorney that got outed for defending a Nazi in court. Like, well, I just support someone's free speech. Like, you could have just not taken the fucking case.
Yeah. No, I mean,
there's so many. You see that all the time. You see plenty of people who are just like, well, God, what was it today? Somebody who is worrying that they would be a pedophile. It's like, you don't have to say these things online. You can just shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. I don't want to know. Why are you telling me these things? Now I have to have a response to this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like every time anyone overshares on the internet and not in a way that's like, ever like, just like someone's, you're drunk and you just like, reveal like, I don't know, like, oh, I like,
Right.
vomited on my friend's coat at a Christmas party one night and never told him. It's never something
Right,
like that. It's always like something like deeply dark and disturbing that you never had to put in fucking writing. I mean, once again, like going back to like the fucking wall grift, like, I don't know. Once again, just don't write a bunch of emails that say, "Hey, want to do crimes." That generally
talk to
helps.
each other verbally about doing crimes.
Like
That's what we do.
Imagine the poor fucking NSA agent reading our DMs.
Yeah, it's like, and I don't think that like you have to do this civility dance where like, oh, he's they've been my friend for so long, and I understand that they might be friends or work for some very, very horrible people or horrible, like if a member of my family worked for Nestle as like not a fucking assembly line worker or whatever, as like corporate, like you're fucking dead to me. You employ child slaves. Like, because like there's certain choices that we all have to make in our life, the things that you are going to be around or associated with. And when you make that choice, even if you're the nicest person on earth to my face, that tells me who you are deep inside. You know what I mean? Like, and if you're taking like a normal fucking factory job or whatever, like there's a Nestle bottling plant or whatever in Washington. If you're fucking bottling water for $20 an hour, I'm not going to hold that against you. Good. Like, it's really cool that you're making that much money and it's a union gig. Good for you. However, if you get promoted into corporate, you're now a fucking bastard.
Well, it's like if you're, I mean, I saw some like fucking Galaxy Brain thing about, who is it? It's Kamala Harris's brother-in-law is like the chief general counsel for fucking Uber. And like someone was like, oh, like you should be like attorney general. It's like, you absolute fucking mush-brained piece of shit. Like,
yeah, but the people who support Kamala Harris would be totally fine with like even if they knew everything that Uber does, like on the down low, they would still be cool with it.
Everybody, as always, thank you. You can follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way, hellofawaytodie.com for all of our writings, the store, things along that path there. So, anyway, Nate, I mean, of course, we didn't go as in depth as anybody should really go, but we've gone in depth.
We'll link to the report and in the show notes. And yeah, if you have any questions for us, please hit us up on the various avenues. You can do that. We have a Facebook account. You can message us there, message us on Twitter, or send an email to sergeantjoker@hellofawaytodie.com.
Yep. And for the rest of you, we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Take care.